Following a breaking news situation unfolding in Dallas from Love Field Airport, about 7 miles from Dallas. Shots were fired, we believe, outside of the terminal there. We want to give you a live look right now of the airport. From what we're hearing, about 12:20 p.m., there were guns drawn at one point. Dallas police responding to the scene. This is the video. You can hear there are at least 9 gunshots by our counts from this video. And you could hear someone yelling, "Get down, get down." A woman screaming, someone else yelling, "Oh God, oh God." And then again, you can see right there the person in the green fluorescent shirt appears to be holding a gun, drawing it. We don't believe at this point, we know one person was wounded and taken to the hospital. We don't believe it was a police officer. We haven't seen any wounded officers in the video that you're seeing right here. But again, at least 9 shots shutting down parts of this airport for a certain period of time. Our Omar Villafranca was en route to the airport and had said that parts of the airport are now being reopened, particularly the baggage claim part of the airport. I want to bring in our transportation correspondent, Chris Van Cleve. Chris, have you heard anything from the FAA, from TSA? What are your sources telling you about this incident?
Well, so the FAA is going to defer to Dallas police because they're going to be the lead in looking into whatever it is that happened in the baggage claim area. I think it's important to note that this happened appeared to have happened in an area of the airport that would not be inside the secured area. So it would not be necessarily under the jurisdiction of the TSA. This is, one of those places that right around the baggage claim entrance. That's where passengers are coming out. It's not anywhere near the screening area, so this is this is in that insecure part of the airport that you've heard a lot of talk about after Brussels.
That's interesting. You say it's what you call the not secure area of the airport. Talk to us now, Chris, about what happens at this point. You say it's a police have already told us there will be an investigation, but does this raise concerns about security for airports all across the country? As you mentioned, you don't go through security at this part when you're dropping off your bags or passengers.
So this has been a conversation that people have been having since Brussels and likely before. You saw that we had that shooting at LAX a couple of years ago at a TSA checkpoint where a screener was killed. You had an incident at the New Orleans airport where somebody brought a machete into the airport and was shot by a police officer. So you have had circumstances where there has been violence in the areas that are outside security, those insecure or soft target parts of the airport. Now, we don't know what happened in Dallas. We don't know why there were these shots fired, and certainly that's what the police are looking at now. From the video, it certainly did look like that was a police officer moving in when we were hearing those shots being fired. So, you're going to see a standard investigation. They're going to treat it like an officer-involved shooting, which gets looked at kind of on par with a homicide investigation. They take those very seriously. But from an airport security standpoint, there is an ongoing conversation about how do you secure the soft targets? How do you bring levels of security to the places that haven't been screened? You can push the perimeter out and screen people as they come in the door, but then you would have had a huge line of people potentially right where this incident happened, right at the curb. So that's not ideal either. And the thought has been that outside of the secure area, that as you move closer to the checkpoint and closer to the airplane, that there's an ever growing amount of security.
Chris, I know that the airport in Tel Aviv, which many people look to Israeli security because it is one of the most secure airports in the world. When I drive up to the airport in Tel Aviv, I am quite frequently picked out. They stop cars, they have you open your trunk. This is, at least half a mile before you even get to the airport, I would say, quarter of a mile maybe. They open up the back of your trunk, they check your passports, they ask you probing questions about where you've been pretty much. Has there been any talk about airports across the country to try and implement that sort of standard far away from where this situation is taking place, from the curb pretty much?
You'll see some of that at LAX now as you're approaching the airport, that they will do some random vehicle checks. And certainly in periods of heightened security, we've seen it at the Port Authority airports as well. The difference between U.S. airports and the U.S. aviation system and the Israeli system is the Israeli system is much smaller. You're dealing with many fewer flyers than say, New York's JFK, LAX, if you were trying to do that nationwide in the U.S., you run into some real sort of structural issues about how you would do that when you're going to back traffic up 4 or 5 miles outside of an airport while you're doing that, and what does that mean for the surrounding traffic and neighborhood? So there's some logistical issues with that. But you do see some airports employ that, stop and check on a random basis. And what tends to be the thinking is that the best strategy, knowing that you can't turn an airport into Fort Knox from from a mile away, is that as you get closer to the airport, as you get closer to the checkpoint, as you get through the checkpoint, the levels of security go up. I mean, we can see from the video what appears to be a police officer on that situation, whatever it was, right away.
Yeah.
So there was a police presence there. You had a uniformed police officer, it certainly appears anyway, there as this was unfolding, whatever it was.
That's
I mean, you had security there. Now the difference is, could you make that more secure? And sure, yes, you could make it more secure. You have to balance that with what are flyers going to put up with.
Lots of concerns, Chris, especially when you're talking about the Brussels attack and soft targets that were hit there. What have been the conversations, Chris, with TSA, with the FAA about better securing airports around the country recently? Well,
so a lot of the talk about soft targets was unfolding as we were seeing these really long airport lines. And the TSA administrator acknowledged that is a problem. That is a soft target, and it's an inviting target. The intelligence continues to be that there is not a credible threat to U.S. airports at this time. But one of the things you think about is how quickly can you move people in and out of the airport? Because when you start to see big queues of people, it becomes a higher value target, so to speak, potentially. There is concern about the lines, particularly as we are entering the summer season. Another 2 weeks when kids are out of school, the airports are going to be really busy. There's going to be a lot of people there. We know that for the most part, they're now waiting in lines that are less than a half hour long, but that's still a decent number of people queued up. And that is an ongoing conversation about what can you do. There's technology being developed now that could be a sensor that could work like a police dog around the clock in the background that could pick up explosive vapor, and we've done some stories on that. But somebody smuggling a gun in, the thought is the best option right now is to have a robust, uniformed, visible police presence. Now think about when you go through an airport now, it's not uncommon to see an officer walking around with an assault rifle-looking weapon. And that's done very clearly to be a deterrent. It's that little bit of security theater along with that police presence that sends a message.
Yeah, you make a very good point, though, Chris, talking about how there was a uniformed police officer who was able to respond immediately. Just a few seconds ago, you saw an image, right? There you go. This car with the broken windshields, people are saying this could be very significant. There is unconfirmed reports that somebody may have been throwing things at this car, and that could have potentially started off this incident, leading to this shooting. We don't know exactly what transpired leading up to it, but it's believed that somebody was throwing something onto this car, and that's how this whole incident unfolded. We've got Chris Van Cleve, our transportation correspondent, standing by. I want to bring in right now former FBI Assistant Director Ron Husko, who is on the phone with us. Ron, the police have said this is now going to be an investigation. Walk us through the steps now. What happens?
Well, first you want to get some identifiers on the people involved in all of these cases. We just saw it recently out in UCLA, where victimology becomes important. Is this a random, road rage incident that played out at the police department? Is it a domestic situation, or is it something else entirely? And so, a starting point, a very obvious starting point, is who is the victim, who is the shooter, or the subject or subjects. Do they have a vehicle that's here? What's in the vehicle, so we can assure ourselves that vehicle doesn't present, or its contents present, an additional threat to us? What does their network look like? What's been posted on social media, if anything? Is there something that drives the investigation in a particular direction that says this was a planned event.
Ron, if you can
and
hold
that
on.
there are other schemers.
I'm sorry to interrupt you for just a second. I want to actually bring in Raquel Amparo Stewart, who's the managing editor of KTVT, our CBS affiliate down there on the ground. Raquel, what can you tell us about what you know right now?
Hey, Reena. I'm actually standing in the TSA line, which is really not moving. We were supposed to be flying to California today and drove up about 10 minutes after the shots were fired. Witnesses leaving the building told us not to go inside as we were walking up to the ticketing counter. I heard all kinds of things from a bunch of shots fired until I found two witnesses who told me what they saw. As they were leaving the airport, having landed this morning, they saw a Dallas police officer drive up in his cruiser along with some other officers behind him. That particular officer got out of his cruiser with gun drawn and shot someone standing outside the airport. That person didn't have any baggage, didn't look like a passenger. They didn't describe him as suspicious, but they just said he didn't look like someone who was traveling that day. He was shot multiple times, and a vehicle outside was shot multiple times. I know the station photographer has some video of that. Since then, they evacuated the building. Passengers were eventually allowed back inside about an hour later, but TSA is not letting anyone through. In fact, the gates that come down when the airport closes are what's clamped down right now. In the last 20 minutes, they asked all passengers who had already cleared security and were seated at their gate, ready to depart, to come back out to clear security again. I hear the most confusion is actually at baggage claim, because that seems to be the most crowded area right now, and bags are not moving. No one's deplaning. I mean, it seems like the whole airport's on lockdown. I haven't seen a plane take off in an hour.
So if you have a flight out of Dallas, Love Field, it doesn't look like it's taking off anytime soon. Raquel, any sense from airport officials on the ground when they might feel secure and safe enough to reopen that area?
No, unfortunately, the only overhead announcement we heard from Dallas police actually was an officer asking for witnesses who might still be in the area to come forward, that they needed as many as possible. And he apologized to everyone standing in the line for security and said basically they don't know when this will reopen, and they apologize for the inconvenience. We're
just getting word in, Raquel, that the officer involved in this incident is okay, was not wounded or injured in this incident. So police are telling us that right now. And you're saying that police on the ground where you are asking for witnesses to try to piece together exactly what happened.
Exactly. The two witnesses I spoke to told me the person who was shot didn't appear to have a weapon, but they were not close enough, obviously, to make sure that the guy wasn't armed without holding a gun. It didn't look as if someone who was sort of attacking anyone. But again, they did describe this officer arriving as if he knew what he was walking up to, because he caught out of his vehicle with his gun drawn.
Your station KTVT, Raquel, now reporting that the airport is open and that they are going to be resuming baggage screening for everyone. Everybody in the entire airport will now need to be rescreened. Are you physically seeing that where you are from the airport? I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news.
Wow, no, I'm not. I'm actually fairly close to the front of what is the TSA line, and we haven't moved in 40 minutes. But I'm not seeing anyone come with their baggage from baggage claim from where I'm standing.
45 minutes.
Yeah. With a 14-month-old.
Oh, gosh, I feel for you, Raquel. I know what that's like.
But he's being great.
That's great. I hope he gets a little special treat after this one. It's not easy, I know, traveling with children. I feel on a normal day. But again, we're following the situation where at least one person on the ground was shot. We were hearing it was a police-involved shooting. Raquel, what's the sense? We've got Raquel Amparo Stewart, who's managing editor of KTVT, our affiliate there on the ground. Raquel, what's the sense leading up to it before? Was there any sort of, were you there in the vicinity when the shooting actually took place?
No, I think I was about 10 minutes behind it. We had just pulled up, gotten our car parked, and were walking towards the terminal when passengers running outside told us not to go in. They'd seen us carrying our baby, obviously, and thought they should give us a heads up. From that point on, it was strange. I didn't see a really heavy police presence, not any more than you normally see as officers try to keep people from pulling up and sort of sitting and waiting for passengers longer than they should. But within about 10 minutes after that, so by about 12:15, 12:20, multiple ambulances, at least one fire truck, and then lots of heavy police presence started arriving. And at that point, they started rerouting traffic. No cars were allowed anywhere near the terminal, and they were basically setting up barricades. But we arrived, like I said, about 10 minutes after the shots were fired.
And Raquel, we're shuttling through right now your photos that you took from outside of the airport, the vicinity where we believe this incident took place. Tell us a little bit about it. I'm looking at a police car right now, and it appears to be a little bit away. What was the mood like in the terminal there outside when you were arriving at the airport?
Relatively calm, but confusing. It almost felt a little bit like a game of telephone. Passengers are kind of giving me different accounts of what had happened. But once I finally found sorry.
Oh.
Once I finally found those two witnesses that actually seen it.
Raquel, I
things got a little bit
understand.
clearer.
You've been so wonderful. We are so appreciative of these images you sent us, and your reporting has been fantastic. But I know you've got a little guy there, and if you need to go, please don't hesitate.
My husband's being great.
Oh, that's great to hear. So you were saying right now, from where you're standing, it doesn't appear that anybody is being rescreened, even though we are hearing that the airport should be back up and running.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone is being rescreened, I guess it's possible it's the folks who were already up and inside security. So maybe those passengers are being allowed in, but I cannot see that from where I'm standing.
And what time was your flight today, Raquel?
Oh, at about 2:15.
Oh, so it should have taken off at this point, huh?
No, sorry, 2:15 Central. So
Oh, okay.
In about an hour.
Okay. And there's no guidance for anyone in the airport as to how long these delays will be for people who are trying to leave today.
No, they're reinforcing they want to keep everyone safe, obviously, and no one will argue with that. So that's all they keep telling us.
And Raquel, we're hearing that we are expecting any minute now a police update on the situation to let us know exactly what happened. We do know that there was a shooting that took place outside Dallas Love Field where one person was wounded and transported to the hospital. Raquel Amparo-Stewart, who's a managing editor of KTVT, was there just a few minutes after the incident unfolded. We were using some of her still photos of the incident. We also, from her station, KTVT, had an image of a car where the side windows were completely blown out. It's believed that possibly there was a shooting. The police shot into that vehicle for some reason. And Raquel telling us that there appeared to be a man that police shot out who appeared to have been to witnesses on the ground unarmed, but they can't confirm that. And you see the car right there. For some reason, police also shot into that car that is parked right outside that terminal entrance. For a great period of time, their baggage claim was shut down, the gates, the terminal, the security, all completely shut down. Folks unable to move and pretty much paralyzed, and that's where we found Raquel, who was supposed to take off in about an hour or so for a flight, and she's reporting to us that the entire area is completely shut down. And we're standing by for a police press conference, expecting it any moment now.